All right. Well, welcome back to those of you who've attended previous sessions. Welcome to those of you who are attending a first session here in our discussion zone. I've been encouraged by how lively the previous discussions have been. When I introduce the moderator in just a moment, she will remind you that you are free to ask questions and direct your comments to our panelists all the way through the session. So if you hear something to which you would like perhaps to strongly object, or you hear something that stimulates a pressing question, do please raise your hand, and one of my colleagues will come round with a microphone. Just one point of housekeeping: if you would like to ask a question or direct a comment, do please announce clearly who you are and which organisation you're representing. So, the panellists will be introduced in turn just a moment by our moderator. So it's simply my duty to introduce that moderator, and we're joined today by Sarah Cowell, who comes from another EMAP company, working for EMAP Middle East and working as part of the MED, the Middle East Economic Digest team. We've been really encouraged by the close partnership between ourselves as Bett organisers and our friends and close colleagues from the MED team. For those of you who are not MED readers, we understand it is the oldest publication, the publication of record for the business community here in the Middle East. And those of you who attended earlier sessions will have heard from the editor, Richard Thompson, about how his team is focusing ever more strongly on the education sector as the importance of investment in education becomes more and more obvious to us all working in this region. And even in terms of covering education sector business interests for their and opportunities for their regular readership, this is something that they're very focused on. So I think you can expect to see a lot more coverage of the education sector and of technology and education in MED. And Sarah, one of her roles has been to produce the Education Quarterly supplement for MED, which has come out fairly recently. If you've not received a copy of that, I think some more of these will be made available to you as visitors here tomorrow. So I'd encourage you to pick up a copy, as there's some excellent and insightful reading there. So I'll hand over to Sarah now to introduce our panellists and kick off what I hope will be a lively and engaging session on the issue of the professional development of world-class teachers here in the Middle East, with a particular focus on those teachers' confidence and competence with the use of ICT to enrich their teaching and learning. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this panel discussion on educating the educators, the professional development of world-class teachers with a focus on ICT. To begin, can I ask each panellist in turn to introduce themselves to our audience and to make a short positioning statement about the issues that are captured in the title of the session?
Should I start?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Yelena. My family name is too difficult to pronounce, but I will say it. Gojevets. I work for Hewlett-Packard Learning Initiative for Entrepreneurs, which stands, in fact, HP Life. And you can see our presentations on the stand. We train trainers and teachers in high schools and in universities because we believe that only the trained, in fact properly trained trainers can pass the real knowledge on how ICT can be used in schools. We believe very much that they should be able to create safe environments in which children can train, can learn, and explore sciences, life, and everything else.
Okay. Hello, I'm Professor Ibrahim Halloum. I'm here on behalf of Educational Research Center in Lebanon. At ERC, Educational Research Center, we've been involved in numerous initiatives in education throughout the Arab world. Including a number of initiatives on professional development and continuous professional development of teachers. Today I'll try to share our experience with you on what we did in this respect and what we learned throughout the many years of trying to help teachers build their capacities using ICT as well as other pedagogical material. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Malcolm, and I'm here with an organisation known as LSN. We're in fact in the sister exhibition and conference just over the way, the BFE, Building Future Education area of the exhibition. And that's because we have an operational partnership with a firm of education architects, because we firmly believe that if you're creating the learning spaces for the future, then you need to do that from the ground up. LSN is a large consultancy, training, research, curriculum development organisation. In the UAE, we work in partnership with Dubai Men's College of the HCT group, and we firmly believe that technology has a key place to roll in the education of the future. And I think a particular factor within that is it has a key place to play in lifelong learning, not just around school education, but education and training and development for everybody throughout their various stages of their lives.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carl Bartley. I'm representing CFBT as an ICT partnership teacher. I'm sitting on the panel today. I've quite a privileged position of being able to have worked with both schools here in Abu Dhabi and in England, and as a result, this is the views I would like to put forward as for the skills gap, etc., with the ICT and how the partnership teachers and primary teachers represent themselves within all of the schools.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Zaid Shubailat, and I'm the Regional Director for Education for Microsoft Middle East and Africa. It's a pleasure being here. I've been actually fortunate. I attended the last session, and in my previous role, I worked closely with as Microsoft with the Jordan Education Initiative, and we were one of the many partners that supported them in launching the program and supporting them throughout the way. So a lot of learning that came from that, a long way from 2003. But really, the main point, if I want to reflect on the subject at hand, it is I would say it's 21st century skills, and that's really the core of everything. Now, as Microsoft, we say, okay, anytime, anywhere, learning for all. And you'll find that the views of many of us here are going to be there's nothing surprising about it. It's about the students, right? Really at the center of things. It's about them achieving. It's about teaching them the type of skills that they're going to need. That before, when you think of 21st century skills, they were skills that would help you succeed. Now, metaphorically speaking, they're skills that you need to actually survive. And it's at the center of everything, everyone's thoughts, whether it is an economist, a policymaker, a parent, or a teacher. And the question is, well, how do you teach 21st century skills? What do you do with teachers? How can you how can you work with teachers and teach them teach them the new methodologies, the innovative ways of teaching? How do you work on a cultural shifts? So many of the items that we will explore today. Pleasure being here.
Okay, thank you very much to all of our panellists for being here today. I just want to reiterate what Joe said at the beginning to say that we promote a lively discussion. So if you hear any points that you agree or disagree with, then please jump in. And likewise to our audience, please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question or make a point about something that you've heard today. Okay, let's begin this discussion by first asking, what are the dangers in investing heavily in hardware and software ahead of setting up effective teacher CPD programs? And I would like to put this question to Zaid.
Well, thanks. So I'm going to start with a statement, and maybe someone will challenge this one. But I'm going to go with the whole notion that ICT in education is important. It must exist. Now, in order to support this, I'm just going to refer to some of the numbers that we have. So this was a survey that was given to educators, and it was done by the Global Network Readiness for Education, which is sponsored by Harvard. And the results came out that 74% of teachers responded that ICT improves student interaction and collaboration, which is part of 21st century skills. 65% responded that ICT makes them better and more capable teachers. And 79% responded that computers have improved students' learnings. So this is as a basis of saying ICT is important. Now the question is, well, how do we approach ICT? And what happens if there is a quick investment? So if we take a step back and you really think about things, many people consider the introduction of ICT in education and in the classroom as part of an education reform program, which in a way is correct if you're reforming the entire system, right? Now, however, I will always say, and I'll base it on the whole notion that, so what happens if you just introduce ICT without having a specific training plan where you actually focus on teachers? Well, the first thing, students, so the younger students, will certainly exploit everything whatever tool you will give them. I've been fortunate to see how an 8-year-old would actually start working on a word processor, and will get to know all of these internal things in a word processor that many of us really probably haven't used. So kids they're relentless. They will learn. They will understand something like how to use these type of tools. But then what's important is that every program, whether it's a small program or a reform program, it needs to succeed. It needs to have support. It needs to have support of the people who are going to be eventually investing and paying the bills for these things. So what are the things that need to happen? Well, certainly you need a type of cultural shift that will happen in traditional systems. If all of a sudden you find students that are using this type of technology without it being used in a controlled and specified way, then the danger is that there will be a backlash. Teachers will not want to start using these type of systems. Well, I'm speaking in generalities. I'm sure there are going to be the motivated ones within the system who would want to use that. The second thing, with a lack of a system of evaluation, of seeing how ICT actually is improving, well then you're not going to have a good way of proving a return on the type of investment that has to be done. Now these investments that I'm talking about, if we're talking about reforming an educational type of system at a ministry or a district level, and with this hardware, it's a big capital expenditure. So it is important to have a type of program that specifies, well, how do we evaluate whether this is right? Are we getting the right results out from here? Are they learning 21st century skills? So the fear of not having a type of program that will first start to train the teachers on how to support these students in accepting and learning the type of structured skills that they need for the future. Again, the fear of failure or perceived failure will certainly happen. So the support that will be needed is obviously there has to be a structured way of doing it. Again, it's about a parallel introduction of ICT within the classroom, the proper usage of ICT within the classroom, and obviously also is providing access to students. Research has showed that, actually there's news research that was just published, that it's actually students also at home who have computers at home and have access to computers at home are performing better in general than people who have access to technology or don't have access to technology or have access to technology in the classroom. So a preferred parallel structured way of introducing these things will guarantee a return on investment, or else people won't be making the investment, and that is the real danger.
It's also about engaging the teachers as well, isn't it? So, you can have all this equipment in the classroom, you can spend all this money and place it in there, and I think the children will take it on board, but it's surely about engaging the teachers as well. Perhaps that's the point that you would like to take up.
Yeah, in fact, what I would like to say when you said the kids, they will explore, that's for sure. They will explore, and probably they will know very, very fast all the gadgets and all the details of the software. Yeah. But the layer that you have to put on is to create really a creative learning environment that they can go beyond on the functionalities of the software. Because the training is not about how to learn how a particular software works, but what can you do with that and how to apply it in the real life. And in fact, teachers, what they have to learn is how to create this kind of engaging atmosphere and project-based learning, experiential training, experiential learning atmosphere where kids can explore and go beyond the software and use a computer and the software, hardware and software, only as a tool to learn and to create something more in life.
That's a difficult thing to do, though, surely. So, I mean, you know, how do teachers in this region move ahead to achieve that in the classroom?
May I jump in,
Yeah.
please? Sometimes when we look at technology today, we think that with technology we could have some kind of a magic wonder that would help us resolve all kinds of problems, especially in education. Now, research that has been conducted in the last 20 or 30 years, but especially in the last 10 years, has been telling us a number of things. First, if you go back a little bit, if you don't mind, to the main topic here, which is continuous professional development of teachers and the use of ICT. When we say continuous professional development, so the word continuous there is already a very important word that most of us in many countries around the world are not used to. Because when you say professional development, especially of teachers, for most people it's something that you do at the pre-service level. In other words, when we go to college, get a degree, a teaching diploma or something, and go on teaching kids according to what we've learned in that, with that particular degree that we've got. Continuous professional development beyond graduation year, we rarely see it. We rarely see it because of so many reasons, especially in our part of the world. Yeah. In the Arab world, continuous professional development for teachers, it sounds sometimes like a foreign culture that you're imposing on us. And the reason is that we're not used to the idea of working on ourselves continuously. Yeah. We think that once we graduate from the university, that's it. We have everything we need to succeed in our work. And in fact, that's not true. So that's the first impediment that we have to overcome, which is to bring about that new culture of continuous professional development, which necessarily means a number of things. There are a number of changes that need to be made at the legal level in many countries, because here we're talking, in this part of the world, we're talking about the centralized educational systems in the most countries, if I even say, I would say even virtually all countries. So the first thing you need to do, you have a certain legal system that promotes continuous professional development, that would actually provide incentives for teachers to go into continuous professional development. So this is one. The other side of the coin, which is ICT, the use of ICT in continuous professional development. Like I've said before, we should not expect ICT actually to resolve all the problems. ICT, we could look at it as a component, an important component that would help us resolve the number of problems that we're facing in education. The main problem that we face in education, whether at the student level or at the teacher level, is that our educational system in most countries around the world, even in the most developed countries, are still promoting what we call rote learning. In other words, we're simply working on letting students work on their capacity to remember few things that they could read in a book or that they hear from the teacher. We do not concentrate on what we call meaningful learning. In other words, we do not try to help our kids develop real understanding of what they're learning. And most importantly, we're not working on what we call the most important skills and dispositions needed for success in modern life. And that requires another new culture, which is another new educational framework under which we need to work. And this is a major thing at the Educational Research Center we've been working on. At ERC, again, the Educational Research Center in Lebanon, the main thing we've been working on for the last few years is that unless you have a very well-defined educational framework under the umbrella of which you train teachers, you do anything you need to do, whether for teachers, students, administrators, name it, all the people involved in the educational system, they have to work under a clearly well-defined educational philosophy. So we developed in the last few years a research-based educational framework that we called profile shaping education. And under profile shaping education, the target is to help students, everybody who works in education has to be prepared, teachers, administrators, everybody else, they have to be prepared to help students develop the kind of profile that they need for success in modern life. And that profile does not consist of what we currently find in our textbooks or even in our CT tools that we have available at schools. That profile consists primarily of skills and dispositions that our students need in various aspects of everyday life.
Yeah.
So this is what we need to concentrate on. Our professional development of teachers need to concentrate on how they can help, like my colleague has been saying. She mentioned a very important word, which is experiential learning. This is where ICT comes. ICT comes to foster, to promote experiential learning, in other words, to promote hands-on, minds-on activities where students would be actively involved in the learning process to develop the kind of skills that we need in today's life.
Could it be argued that because there's such a focus on rote learning, particularly in this region, that teachers lack the competence and the confidence to cope with ICT in the classroom? Would you say that's an issue? Perhaps I could put this to...
I think the starting point for any technology or any other form of aid for teachers has to be the curriculum that the teachers are working with. The curriculum and the way that is assessed will in turn determine how that curriculum is taught. And if teachers are focused on very much a memory recall exam at the end of a period of study, then that's going to drive the way that they undertake their teaching. If, however, you've got a project-based assessment approach, if you've got experiential learning, which in turn is assessed both formatively and summatively, then that in turn will mean that the teachers will be looking at different ways of delivering that curriculum. And the use of IT can assist in those forms of learning as well. The social networking tools that a lot of people are using now can be used in experiential and project-based teaching. And developing teachers to do that is certainly an aim that we need to be working towards. But let's not forget that we have a generation of teachers coming through that are very, very well versed in the current applications of technology. And in part, it's about facilitating them so that they can use their skills in the classroom context. And just picking up on one final thing that colleagues have said, if we want teachers to succeed in their use of technology or to achieve particular curriculum aims, they need to be well led by managers that understand what the teachers are trying to achieve. So you won't achieve significant curriculum change if you don't change the management system and leadership as well, so that they can facilitate and take their teachers forward.
Okay, thank you. Professor Halloon, do you have a response to what Bill just said?
No, I'm absolutely with everything he said. But again, that brings me back to the issue of leadership, the last thing you mentioned. Leadership, it has to come from within. In other words, it has to be a part of the teacher profile. If the teacher is going to keep relying on people to lead them, we're not going to get anywhere. The teacher has to be leader, his or her own leader in the classroom. Now, definitely, they need support. They need to have a good administration to support them. They need to have various kind of support systems. But the leadership, the locus of control, it has to be from within. The teacher himself has to be the leader in the classroom. And the teacher, above all, has to be the leader in self-regulation. In other words, every single teacher, you mentioned something about evaluation and assessment, every single teacher has to keep reflecting continuously on their own practice. And when we talk about professional development or continuous professional development, sometimes people think that the only way to do it is by going and taking a few courses at the university or something. No. Continuous professional development is something that you could actually undertake in the classroom. So when the teacher is involved inside the classroom, and the kind of sometimes what we call action research and kind of reflective thinking about what they're doing in the classroom, that's part of professional development. But then the teacher in the pre-service training, they have to be prepared to do that. In other words, they have to be prepared to do on their own number of things that they are not currently doing in the classroom. Because what our teachers are doing, and this is true in all virtually all around the world. I'm not talking only about the Arab world. What our teachers are practically doing now, their role is simply the role of a transmitter of knowledge. In other words, they're playing the role of an agent between the textbook and the student. And all they have to do, this is a kind of a transmission channel where we're simply transmitting the knowledge in the textbook to the student. So that's the main problem.
Okay.
And ICT is not going to help it if you're going to keep using ICT under the same philosophy, under the same umbrella.
Yelena?
Okay, I agree with you 100%. That's exactly, we have to pass from the push approach to, or rather push the knowledge into the heads of children or young people, into the approach where the teacher will be more a coach. Don't forget that ICT gives you a lot of space to fail. How children learn? They try, they fail, and they retry. That's how they play games. That's how they learn how to use a new software. Children, the teachers have to do the same, because the teacher usually, I believe in the part of the world that I come from Balkans, the teacher is the big boss in the training room, and the teacher cannot fail. He has to know everything. Teachers have to learn that they cannot learn everything. They cannot know everything. ICT will show them that they have also to try to learn by trying, by doing. And in fact, the goal is that we have to make a change management also with them. They are there to facilitate the learning. They're there to coach young people to learn something, and not only to do this push approach.
Okay.
I just wanted to emphasize what you said.
Okay, thank you.
And may I say, just with that, because you're saying about change management there with the bits, etc. But with myself, I'm working with the local teachers here, both in Abu Dhabi and in the Western Zone. And I find there a lot, because you was mentioning about the culture and it was hard to change that. But within CFBT, with myself, what I've found myself, and there's some teachers here today, they are really willing to be able to do that. They want to make the changes, they want to have the stuff.
So the hope exists.
Yeah, the hope exists, but in some respects, it's a shame because it is being withheld by lack of resources. That's the thing I've found. The majority of teachers who I've worked with here are really keen. They want to learn more, they want to change their style of teaching from just, this is what we're doing today, page 1. Next week, page 2. They don't want to do that anymore. They want to involve project work. They want to do all that sort of stuff. But I can see some of the questions coming up about what are the challenges facing with CPD. Another thing associated with that, and what I found anyway, is that it's the actual structure of the school day and the timings. It's very, very difficult to get everybody together in one space to be able to do continual professional development. You can look at ICT in two ways, as a tool for learning, or you can look at it as a subject by itself. And I think as a tool for learning, we can encourage CPD among the like history teachers, geography teachers, etc. But it's getting times within that framework of the school day for them to be able to do it.
So is it the case that we were talking about CPD, but do we need to get more down to the nuts and bolts of it? Maybe we're running before we can walk, and the actual basics aren't there in place to introduce the things that teachers want to see.
Because I think myself, with a lot of the, you could say, with running before you can walk business, especially with the change management, if you're saying, right, today we are going to be doing about this interactive whiteboard, you can teach them all about the interactive whiteboard. If they haven't got one in the classroom, then the enthusiasm and everything for that learning is going to wane over a few weeks. They could book themselves into the IT room maybe once a fortnight, something like that, with everybody else. And if they do not carry on with that, I think a lot of it there is running before they can walk, because I would prefer to have all the infrastructure in place and then start with all that business.
Okay, perhaps this is a good point to put to you, Zaid. You're from Microsoft, so you can have a comment about the equipment that's actually going into the classroom. Do you agree with what's just been said?
So it has to be, again, a planned approach of what kind of equipment that you want to put in classroom. And I want to take a step back and touch on one thing before I get to the equipment, which is it's about the whole notion of relying on the teacher as being a leader. Well, ideally it would be great. But the fact is that no, they're not. Okay, we do have the top percentile of people who are going to be leaders within the classrooms. However, my view of success would be like how can we raise what the standard, which is the median, how that bell-shaped curve, how can we move that to the right? So how can we get to the majority of teachers and increase their capabilities? And these are things that are done through a grassroots approach. It's like you have to go in there. Certainly you have to do your proof of concepts. You have to understand the learning. And I think over so many years, I think we've learned. We know now what are the things that work and what are the things that would represent a challenge. Certainly not having access to technology, that's a problem. You know, it doesn't have to be the total access to technology. Today I was having a conversation with someone who said, well, there's a lot of investment that is going into the infrastructure, huge infrastructure that's being built. And I said, okay, huge infrastructure, when it's available, great. Is it necessary? Does it always have to be there? No, it doesn't. And a case point being, we provided a laptop to a teacher in Lesotho, in Africa. They didn't have even electricity at in the school, but the teacher took the laptop, charged it up, and then took it to school. Now at school, what they did was the study was about studying the local flora. Instead of studying information about flora in the Amazon, they said, no, let's study the local flora that exists here in Lesotho. And students would go out there, they would look at the flora around, they'd come back, they would type some things, put them into the computer, and then graph them out, etc., etc. So that was use of ICT in an innovative way that would promote learning. And so, yes, there needs to be access to ICT. Is it the entire thing so that you can start actually moving that median to the right? Well, no, it's not.
Okay, thank you. I know we have a question down here at the front, so if you... I don't know if we have anybody to... Just down here in the front row, please.
Is it on? Hi, my name is Rasha Abani. I'm from ICD LGC Foundation. I'm the Relations Manager of the Education Sector. First of all, thank you for what you said. Basically, ICDL can a little bit answer the question of Mr. Zaid from Microsoft. We are the International Computer Driving License, which is basically teaching citizens out there on the basic usage of the computer skills and how to use the applications and how to be digitally literate, if you want to call it in that way. So ICDL as ICDL was introduced in the GCC region and basically in UAE, where a lot of governments and decision makers took the initiative of endorsing that digital literacy initiative and basically funding a lot of projects to reach the teachers out there and give them an international certificate that can let them use the computers and be ICT literate. So that could be basically our first step to engage teachers in, because I'm not going to tell a teacher to teach on IT and they don't know how to use the computer. So this could be a problem. I have a question here that might say, I've been to a lot of conferences where they used to talk a lot about e-learning, and e-learning is a lot introduced in the West and in the United States of America. Basically, mainly it's introduced there. So how are we in the GCC region doing with the e-learning? Because basically now we are in partnership with HP launching ICDL e-learning nuggets. And I am talking to a lot of schools here in UAE and introducing the e-learning and introducing the ICDL syllabi on the e-learning. So I don't know who can answer that question, and how are we doing as schools in the GCC region with the e-learning, and how are teachers doing as well?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Professor?
Yeah, I'll take the second part of the question because the first part of the action was addressed to my colleague. As far as e-learning is concerned, again, like I said before, anything that comes under the traditional educational philosophy is not going to get us anywhere. Again, we at Educational Research Center, we've been in the last few years developing a number of e-learning material. We have actually a stand out there. You're welcome to take a look at what we're doing there. So we did a lot of work in e-learning. We did a lot of work in electronic assessment. We have developed a very unique platform for what we call authentic assessment that is meant not as a target by itself, but assessment is meant there as being a tool to guide learning and instruction under, again, the umbrella of profile shaping education. And what we did, everything that we developed at ERC, we developed based on research. So everything that you see out there in our stand, you see it developed based on research that we've conducted in this part of the world, and I'm talking about the Arab world. And this is something unique for us because what we're trying to do, we're trying to cater to the actual needs of our society. And here's another thing, because sometimes we also think that anything that works in the West or any other part of the world might work for us. This is a big mistake. Okay, and what we often do is that we try to import packages in education as well as we do import packages like in cosmetics or anything else. And we assume that what works for cosmetics for a Western woman works for us. It doesn't work the same way in education. We have our culture, we have our needs that are different, so those differences have to be catered for. And this is a major issue at ERC that we've been working on. Develop everything based on the actual needs of our society. Definitely keeping in mind that we want our kids, we want our society to be able to compete in this world. In other words, we have to take into account everything that has been done anywhere else in the world. I spent the best part of my life in the US. I developed modeling theory there for over 20 years. When I've been asked to join ERC here in Lebanon, the first thing we did, we looked at what extent whatever we worked on in the US actually works in the Arab world. And when we did a little analysis, it turned out that a number of things that turned out to be really good in the US didn't work at all in this part of the world. So this is another thing. Again, when we talk about education, please, we hear a lot about the number of educational theories here and there, and we assume that whatever works in any part of the world works in our part. No, this is not true. Some of it will, because the human being is a human being anywhere in the world. There are some common things. We're not going to reinvent the wheel every time we're going to do something new in education. But the key thing, whether you're doing e-learning, ICT, whatever it is, make sure that it's research-based, it's tailored to the needs of the society you're trying to cater to. Otherwise, whatever you do is not going to work.
Okay, thank you. Bill, there was something you
Yeah,
wanted to say?
a few observations. I think e-learning has its place, and really this builds on what's just said, because people learn in different ways, not just in terms of any one country or any one region, but within countries, within regions, people learn in different ways. And a lot of people will respond very, very positively to e-learning opportunities. We use a lot of blended learning, which for us, I think, is a more successful way future, because that forward and more successful for the future, insofar as it mixes an e-content with a face-to-face content. And if you're working on things that are very practical, then you can't do it solely on e-learning. There are certain things where we want people to be able to apply theory, apply their understanding. You need to be doing that in a social context, and I think that's particularly significant. And the other area, I think, we're focusing very heavily on traditional desktop, laptop, computer-driven technology. Let's not forget that technology in education is much, much more than just computers. There's a whole area out there of mobile learning which makes use of a whole range of different devices that can be very, very effective in helping people learn, both in the education building context, i.e. within school, within college, within the workplace, but also outside of that. People can learn continuously through the very clever and very careful use of different technologies that are available.
Okay, thank you. Carl, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was
to
going
the
to say,
e-learning
because the question that you put forward, like how are we doing in the Arab world with the e-learning? With the schools that I've been in, and I could say round about, I'd go up to as far as 30, there is no e-learning facilities in any of the schools. Because I didn't hear any, really, of a direct answer to your question, and that's why I'm just saying to you now.
Zaid, would you like to comment on that?
So I'm going to answer your question with a question. Define e-learning. I mean, that is just it's sort of an umbrella of many different things. Now, if you're going to say, electronic supported ways of learning is e-learning, that's one thing. Then you also have a structured e-learning that is supported through a learning management system that is really touching more on personalized learning, which actually is able to track every student's progression and to say that, all right, this student now has reached this certain competency for a specific skill. Well, people want to go there. There are discussions about going there. Certainly in large education systems with central decision making, this takes a longer time just because the impact of that decision obviously is on a much broader scale. Is it that people are trying to go there? Yes. Blended learning has been really the evolution that eventually potentially could lead to the whole structured education learning system with learning management.
So is it the case that we will ever get to see e-learning in the classrooms, or is it going to stay at the blended learning level and then maybe move on to something else?
Just very quickly, if I could just add that the references I was making were to experiences we do have in this region. They're not UK-based. They're UK-based as well. But.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted just to answer, if you are working with HP, ask them what they are doing with serious games. Do you know what serious games are? You know. So ask them, how can you train children by using games? Because HP develops also games to train children on how to use IT. Yes? But it's e-learning. As was said before, e-learning is just a big umbrella. There is one whole space that is developed named gaming, serious gaming, which means that you create games and they do games, but in fact these games are made for exploring. It's a safe learning environment that you can learn something. But at the end you have the achievements and everything else, so all the gaming concepts are there, but in fact they are made for learning.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm being urged to wrap this up, so I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming along today and to say thank you to our panellists.